Bathurst, ʻbæthəst, is a regional city in the central tablelands of New South Wales, Australia. It is approximately 200 kilometres northwest of Sydney and is the seat of the Bathurst Regional Council. Bathurst is the oldest inland settlement in Australia and had an estimated population of 35,391 as at June 2014. Bathurst is often referred to as the Gold Country, as it was the site of the first gold discovery and where the first gold rush occurred in Australia. Today, education, tourism and manufacturing drive the economy. The internationally known racetrack Mount Panorama is a landmark of the city. Bathurst has an historic city centre with many buildings remaining from the gold rush period of the mid to late 1800s. The median age of the city's population is 34.0 years, which is particularly young for a regional centre, and is related to the large education sector in the community. Population growth has reached 1.6% per annum over the 5 years until 2010, making Bathurst the 7th fastest growing regional city in NSW. This growth over recent years has resulted in increased urban development, including retail precincts, sporting facility, housing estates and expanding industrial areas. Geography. Bathurst is located on the western edge of the Great Dividing Range in the Macquarie River Plain, also known as the Bathurst Plains. The city is located adjacent to the Macquarie River, which is part of the Murray-Darling Basin, the largest river system in Australia. The city is protected by a levee bank to protect the city from occasional flood events. Mount Panorama is located 3 kilometres from the CBD and effectively within the city limits. It is 877 metres AMSL and rises 215 metres above the Bathurst CBD. Bathurst is located adjacent to the Great Western Highway, which begins in the centre of the city of Sydney and finishes at Bathurst. Within the city, 2 main state highways start, the Mitchell Highway to Burke and the Mid-Western Highway to Hay. Bathurst is located approximately midway along a regional road route from Canberra and Goulburn to Mudgee and the Hunter region. Bathurst is also located on the main Western Railway line that starts at Sydney Central Station and proceeds for 242 kilometres by rail to Bathurst. The Macquarie River divides Bathurst with the CBD located on the western side of the river. 4 road bridges and 2 rail bridges span the river within the city area. From the upstream side they are: Rail Bridge closed in 2011, the 4-lane Evans Bridge which opened in 1995, the Denison Bridge opened in 1870, the Gordon Edgell Bridge, a low-level bridge located on George Street, and Rankins Bridge at Eglinton. Landform 2 physical components comprise the Bathurst region, the Bathurst Basin and the Tablelands areas. They are drained by the Macquarie, Turon, Fish and Campbell's rivers to the north and Abercrombie and Isabella rivers to the south. The central basin area of the Bathurst area is mainly granite soils, while in the north area sandstone, conglomerates, greywacke, siltstones, limestones and minor volcanoes predominate. The south is more complex geology with siltstones, sandstones, greywacke, shales and chert, basalt and granite intrusions and embedded volcanic and limestones. Underlying Bathurst is the dominant feature of Bathurst granite, and at Mount Panorama and Mount Stewart basalt occurs. Topography of the region ranges from slightly undulating to rough and very steep country. Approximately 30 kilometres to the east of Bathurst is the folded and faulted sedimentary and metamorphosed formations of the Great Dividing Range, which runs roughly north-south. Climate: Bathurst is in Australia's cool temperate climate zone, which is defined as having mild to warm summers and cool to cold winters. Regular summer thunderstorms are common, resulting from the flat plains country to the west, leading into the mountainous nature of the country around Bathurst and assisting the development of storm cells. Bathurst gets 106.9 clear days annually. In winter, light snowfalls occur on high peaks around Bathurst, typically a few days each year, although snow in the city centre is a rare occurrence, happening every 5 to 10 years or so. On the 12th of January 2013, Bathurst recorded a new record high temperature of 40.2 degrees Celsius, although temperatures of 40 degrees Celsius are exceedingly rare for Bathurst. CBD and suburbs: Bathurst CBD is located on William, George, Hoyke, Russell, and Durham Streets. The CBD is approximately 25 hectares and surrounds 2 city blocks. Within this block layout is banking, government services, shopping centres, retail shops, a park and monuments. Bathurst has retained a mix of main street shopping along with enclosed shopping centres within the CBD. Unlike other towns where the CBD focus has split between Main Street and new shopping centre developments located in the suburbs. Within the CBD lies King's Parade. This is a park setting with several memorials of people and events in history. It is a popular location for locals to meet. Keppel Street is Bathurst's second commercial shopping area, removed from the CBD by 2 blocks to the south. This area developed once the railway arrived in 1876. City planners are responsible for conservation of the historical buildings within Bathurst. The main suburbs of Bathurst are Kelso, Eglinton, West Bathurst, Llanarth, South Bathurst, Gormans Hill, Windradine Heights and Abercrombie Estate. One of the newer suburbs is Marsden Estate, in Kelso. Landmarks: Bathurst's place in Australia's history is clearly evidenced by the large number of landmark monuments, buildings, and parks. Many landmark buildings are included in the architecture section of this article. In the center of the city is a square known as King's Parade. Originally a market area from 1849 to 1906, it was redesignated as a public recreation ground and site for a soldiers' memorial. King's Parade now contains 3 memorials, an open space park and gardens. The Bathurst War Memorial Carillon is a 30.5 meters tall tower structure located in the center of King's Parade. The parade is located in the center of Bathurst CBD. The Carillon is a memorial to the soldiers who lost their lives in the 2 world wars. The bell tower contains 35 cast bronze bells that are rung daily at lunchtime, and an eternal flame on the platform level of the structure. The Carillon was officially completed on Armistice Day, the 11th of November 1933, at a cost of £8,880. The Evans Memorial stands at the northern end of King's Parade. Completed in 1920, the memorial commemorates the discovery of the Bathurst Plains in 1813 by George Evans, Assistant Surveyor of Lands. The Boer War Memorial stands at the southern end of King's Parade. This memorial was unveiled in 1910 by Lord Kitchener. History: the Bathurst region was originally occupied by the Wiradjuri Aboriginal people. Colonial period to Gold Rush era. The government surveyor, George Evans, was the first European to sight the Bathurst Plains in 1813, following the first successful European crossing of the Blue Mountains in the same year. In 1814, Governor Lachlan Macquarie approved an offer by William Cowkes to build a road crossing the Blue Mountains from Emu Plains. The existing road terminus west of Sydney, to the Bathurst Plains. The first road to cross the Blue Mountains was 12 feet wide by 101.5 miles long, built between the 18th of July 1814 to the 14th of January 1815 using 5 freemen, 30 convict labourers and 8 soldiers as guards. Governor Macquarie surveyed the finished road in April 1815 by driving his carriage across it from Sydney to Bathurst. The governor commended Cox and stated that the project would have taken 3 years if it had been done under a contract. As a reward, Cox was awarded 2,000 acres of land near what is now Bathurst. On the 7th of May 1815, Governor Macquarie, at the terminus of Cox's Road, raised the flag, ordered a ceremonial volley to be fired, and proclaimed the future town of Bathurst after the Secretary of State for War and the Colonies, Henry Bathurst, 3rd Earl Bathurst. Bathurst is the oldest inland town in Australia. It was intended to be the administrative centre of the Western Plains of New South Wales, where orderly colonial settlement was planned. Local Wiradjuri groups under leaders such as Windradine resisted the settlers until the frontier wars of the early 1820s ended the open conflict. The initial settlement of Bathurst was on the eastern side of the river in 1816. It is in today's suburb of Kelso. 10 men were granted 50 acres, 5 were men newborn in the colony and 5 were immigrants. These men were William Lee, Richard Mills, Thomas Height, Thomas Swanbrook, George Cheshire, John Abbott, John and James Blackman, John Neville and John Godden. In 1818, Governor Macquarie stated in his diary, "This morning I inspected 10 new settlers for Bathurst. I have agreed to grant each 50 acres of land, a servant, a cow, 4 bushels of wheat, an allotment in the new town, and to receive into the King's store at Bathurst all the wheat they can grow from the first 12 months. In the early years of settlement, Bathurst was a base for many of the early explorers of the NSW inland, including George Evans in 1815, John Oxley in 1817 to 1818, Alan Cunningham in 1823, and Thomas Mitchell during the 1830s. Flecks of gold were first discovered in the Fish River in February 1823, but it was the 12th of February 1851 in a Bathurst hotel when Edward Hargraves announced the discovery of payable gold. Soon, gold was found at Ophir and Hill End in the 1850s. In the 1860s, the town of Bathurst began to boom. Bathurst was to become the first gold centre of Australia. The nearby gold localities would transport the gold to Bathurst, then to Sydney. The mail and gold transport coaches became an obvious target for bushrangers, which became a major problem for the authorities. The Ribbon Gang and the Bathurst Rebellion occurred in 1830, when a large group of over 80 convicts roamed the Bathurst district. They were eventually captured and charged with murder, bushranging and horse thieving. On the 2nd of November 1830, 10 members of the Ribbon Boys were hanged in Bathurst for the crimes. The site of the first and largest public hanging in Bathurst is still marked by the laneway sign Ribbon Gang Lane in the CBD. Ben Hall, who became a notorious bushranger, was married in St Michael's Church at Bathurst in 1856. In October 1863, a gang of 5 raided Bathurst, robbing a jeweller's shop, bailed up the Sportsman's Arms Hotel and tried to steal a racehorse. They returned 3 days later and held up more businesses. John Peasley, another bushranger, was tried and hanged for murder at Bathurst Jail in 1862. Bathurst's economy was transformed by the discovery of gold in 1851. One illustration of the prosperity gold brought to Bathurst is the growth and status of hotels and inns. The first licensed inn within the township was opened in 1835, the Highland.It, at the peak of hotel activity in 1875, coinciding with the gold rush period. There were 61 operating concurrently. A total of 89 hotel locations have been identified in the town of Bathurst, with 112 operating in the immediate district during the course of the history in Bathurst. Initially, many pubs were simply a cottage with stables. As prosperity increased during the gold rush, the hotels became typical of architecture of pubs known today. Development of the city to federation. The ๊bæthəst business was a horse-drawn coaching transport business originally established in Victoria but relocated to Bathurst in 1862 to follow the gold rush. The business provided gold escorts, mail services and passenger services to the towns and rural settlements. ๊bæthəst coaches were constructed in the coaching workshops located in Bathurst, and the Bathurst Information Centre contains a restored ๊bæthəst coach. Bathurst later became the centre of an important coal mining and manufacturing region. The main Western Railway line from Sydney reached Bathurst in 1876. For that time, the town became an important railway centre with workshops, crew base with locomotive depot and track and signal engineering offices. It remains today as the Railway Regional Engineering Headquarters with a large rail component manufacturing facility. In 1885, Bathurst had a population of approximately 8,000 and a district population of an additional 20,000 people. The town in 1885 was a hub for stores such as e.g. Webb and Amco, with supplies and distribution occurring throughout large parts of Western NSW and into Queensland and South Australia. Federation and post-war development. This period is characterized by periods of slow to moderate population growth, with industrial and education industries developing and technology and services delivered to the town. Several major infrastructure developments arrive, such as distributed town gas, electricity, town water supplies, and a sewage treatment system. Town gas had arrived in Bathurst courtesy of a private venture in 1872, with the council providing a competing network from 1888. On 30th of June 1914, the council purchased the Walk Brothers gas system and combined the gas networks. The old gasworks plant on Russell Street was built in 1960. In 1987, natural gas arrived via a new 240 kilometres per pipeline off the Mumbai to Sydney pipeline. The early part of the century saw electricity arrive initially for street lighting. The city converted from gas street lighting to electric lighting on the 22nd of December 1924, when 370 electric lights at a cost of 40,000 liras were switched on. Lighting spread along streets through to 1935, over time to businesses and finally private houses. Sewage treatment was an early infrastructure project funded by the state government and built in 1915. Water supply started with private wells in backyards. Eventually a waterworks was built to the south of the town on the river, with the water pumped through piping laid progressively to the businesses and private dwellings. In 1931, work started on the 1,700 megalitres Winburndale Dam project to gravity feed water through a wood stave pipe laid to the town. The scheme was opened by the Premier of New South Wales on 7 October 1933. Later, a new larger water supply dam was built on the Campbell's River, originally known as the Campbell River Dam Scheme and later renamed the Ben Chifley Dam after the late Prime Minister Ben Chifley of Bathurst. It was opened in November 1956. The Ben Chifley Dam received a major storage upgrade designed to meet the city's needs to 2050. The work was completed in 2001, increasing the capacity by 30% to 30,800 megalitres. An ambulance service commenced on 6 June 1925 with a new Hudson ambulance. A new ambulance station was opened 2 March 1929 and is still used by the NSW ambulance service. Motor cars were becoming common in the early 20th century, and the need for road service patrols commenced in 1927, provided by the NRMA using a motorcycle sidecar response vehicle. The early electronic media age arrived with the opening of commercial radio station ʻbæthəst on 1 January 1937. Bathurst Aerodrome was opened in 1942, initially to benefit the war effort, providing parking for aircraft overflowing from Richmond Air Force Base. The first commercial airline service departed for Sydney on 16 December 1946. A famous Australian brand name of frozen foods began in Bathurst. Robert Gordon Edgell arrived in Bathurst in 1902. By 1906, he was growing pears, apples and asparagus and experimenting with canning and preserving fruit and vegetables, eventually opening a small cannery in 1926. In 1930, he formed the company Gordon Edgell and Amp Sons, which became, and still is, a famous Australian food brand, now owned by Simplot. Many attempts were made to start a university college. The earliest attempts were 1912 through to 1947, when real progress was made with plans for a state teachers' college. The first intake of teacher students came at the beginning of 1951, with the official opening on 9 November 1951. The college has transformed over time into the Mitchell College of Advanced Education on 1 January 1970. The college grew and ultimately became the Charles Sturt University on 19 July 1989. Andrew Denton is a notable alumnus of the university. Bathurst was one of the locations to campaign to be the site of the new federal capital. In an essay prepared by a journalist with the Bathurst Times newspaper, prize were rung in 1901 to promote Bathurst's candidacy. He responds to the federal committee's key requirements for the capital to have centrality and accessibility of situation, salubrity, and capacity for impregnable defense. An army camp was established at Bathurst in early 1940 and was intended for the 2nd Australian Imperial Forces 1st Armoured Division, although it was later converted to an infantry training centre due to the unsuitability of the closely settled area to armoured training. Following the war, this camp was converted to a migrant reception and training centre. The first group of migrants arrived at Bathurst in 1948. At times the centre had up to 10,000 residents. Population growth. Bathurst's population has had rapid growth periods throughout its history, during the mid to late 19th century gold rush period, then post-World War II, when migrants from the war-ravaged countries were settled in the area and returning soldiers were offered farming land, and at the start of this century has been another fast growth period corresponding in part to Sydney's congestion. Other periods have seen a slightly declining population, including the decade around the 1900s and during the 1960s. The following chart illustrates the growth from 1856 to recent times. Architecture. Bathurst has a unique collection of architecture from colonial through to recent times, with many examples remaining intact. Historical buildings range from workers' cottages, terrace houses, mansions, slab huts, industrial, commercial buildings and grand civic structures. Periods, styles and features. Colonial, covering the period from 1815 to 1840. This old colonial period is mostly of Bathurst red brick, sometimes lime-washed, with 12-paned windows and 4 or 6-panel doors. Examples of this style include Old Government House and Holy Trinity Church. Early Victorian. During the early Victorian period from 1840 to 1860, the structures are mostly small domestic buildings. Characteristics of this style has the building line right up close to the street or the front veranda directly on the street. An example of this style include Loxley, a gentleman's townhouse of the period, and the Royal Hotel, originally a single-story building. Mid-Victorian. The mid-Victorian period from 1860 to 1880 coincides with greater affluence and more building materials becoming available, such as glass. Windows typically now became 4 or 6 panes. Row housing is still a common layout, sometimes in a Gothic-influenced style with steeply pitched roofs. An example of this style is the Webb building built in 1862. During this period, Edward Gell designed many of the main buildings, including the ornate street, Stanislaus's College, the railway station of the Victorian Tudor style with Dutch gables topped by finials, bay windows and cast-iron veranda, and a great baronial mansion called Abercrombie House, a large 3-storey, 40-room mansion in the Scottish baronial style. Bathurst Hospital is a large Victorian-era hospital complex in the Second Empire style, constructed of Bathurst red bricks. Verandas are decorated with timber posts, arched brackets and cast-iron balustrades. Many Bathurst mansions were built of the Italian-It style in this period, with features such as bay windows, cast-iron columns, lacework and verandas. These include Woolston, Logan Bray, and Delaware. Bathurst's courthouse, designed by colonial architect James Barnett, stands in a prominent city position and is neoclassical style with octagonal, Renaissance dome, a Doric portico with pediment, octagonal tower with turret, stone facings and brick pilasters, a colonnade of Doric pillars, a sage green roof, red bricks, yellow bricks and long lines of sash windows. Barnett also designed the Bathurst Police Barracks and the Bathurst Jail, with the ornate lion's head holding a key standing over the gateway entrance. St. Stephen's Presbyterian Church is a Gothic structure built of Bathurst red bricks in 1871–72. Late Victorian. During the late Victorian period from 1880 to 1900, the Bathurst Showground buildings represent one of the most intact groups of 19th-century timber showground pavilions in New South Wales. The style is known as Carpenter Gothic. The Old Technical College is a 2-story American Romanesque building erected c. 1896 of red brick with terracotta facings and other detailing. The interior is also of a high quality. Italian-It architecture appears in several Bathurst buildings, including the former Masonic Hall, now known as Carrington House, with stuccoed and decorated surfaces on the facade, and the Westpac Bank building. Federation. During Australia's Federation period from 1900 to 1915, there was experimentation in design and construction. The experimental farm is an example of the Federation style. Many of the Federation-style buildings have decorative timber fretwork and terracotta or wire roofs. Interwar period. During the interwar period from 1915 to 1940, there was great architectural change. Examples in Bathurst include the Knickerbocker Hotel in the functionalist style and the Old Commonwealth Bank built in the Free Classical style. With the coming of electricity in 1924, unique cast-iron light posts and lanterns were installed in the centre of the wide city streets, and these are still an architectural feature of the city streetscape. Governments. Local. See also Bathurst Regional Council. Local government was trialled in the new colony with a Bathurst and Carcoar District Council, established on the 12th of August 1843. Bathurst was proclaimed a town in 1852 and incorporated as a borough in 1862, next a municipality in 1883, then gazetted a city on the 20th of March 1885. The same day as Sydney was declared a city. Bathurst Regional Council was formed on the 26th of May 2004 following the amalgamation of the Bathurst City Council. Most of Evansshire and a small amount of land formerly included in Oberonshire. To capitalise on Bathurst's growth, education facilities and youthful population, the Regional Council is progressing plans for a new Australian Centre for Science, Technology and Emerging Industries, also known as the Technology Park, to be established adjacent to the Charles Sturt University campus, with the centre featuring next-generation emerging industries. State. See also Bathurst State Electoral District. Bathurst is the state seat in the NSW Parliament. This seat covers the major centres of Bathurst and Lithgow, and all are part of Bathurst, Blayney, Cabon, Lithgow, Mid-Western and Oberon local government areas. Since 1859, Bathurst has existed as an electoral district in the NSW Parliament. Prior to 1856, Bathurst was a part of the electoral district of Western Boroughs. Before the 1920s, Bathurst was a single-member constituency. In the 1920s, it became a multi-member district with proportional representation. During the middle part of the 20th century, the seat was marginal between Labour and Country parties. From 1981, when the strong Labour town of Lithgow moved from Blue Mountains to Bathurst, the seat was dominated by Labour, except for 1988 when it was won by the Liberal Party for one 3-year term, and the 2011 election when Paul Toole of the National Party won the seat. Federal. See also Kalari Federal Electoral District. Bathurst is currently within the Federal Electoral District of Kalari, which includes a large part of Western NSW from Lithgow in the east to Tullamore in the west. Prior to the 2010 election, Bathurst was within the Macquarie Federal Electoral District, which was more easterly based, including the Blue Mountains area, with Bathurst as the western boundary of the district. Crime statistics. Crime in Bathurst over the 4-year period 2005 to 2009 was stable. In some areas, the trend has been falling. There is no category of crime where the crime trend is increasing. Crime is categorized by the NSW Bureau of Crime Statistics and Research into 17 categories for statistical purposes.